So let's dig in. As we've got a new format and we've got a new facilitator guide that I'll try and pay attention to. If you speak, please introduce yourself by your name before speaking so we know who you are. You might want to introduce yourself in the chat to save a little time if we're going to do lots of introductions. Are there any announcements for the good of the order?
Hey, Don, this is Frank. I'll turn on my video. So I just put in a rapidly written chat. So if probably not tracking this, but some of you are. I know, Frank, you are, the other Frank, that the United Nations Framework Convention process has a review of the education, training, public access information process, international review, and organizations can submit. So if you've been working at that international level in clean related work and want to contribute to a clean submission, what we're going to do is we're going to build on what ECOS has been doing, and then we're going to allow our unique perspectives to be modifying what they've done, but the structure is what is, they've done a brilliant job, and it just makes it very easy for us to just tweak as opposed to all the hard work they're doing to develop. So just, let me know that you want to be part of that. Not everyone's been working in that space, so it may not be a good use of your time, but all voices are welcome, and it has to move fast. So the submissions have to be submitted by February 15th. So this is going to be quick, short process. So let me know.
Thanks, Frank.
Sure.
Sure. I'll go ahead. Jim Callahan, climatechangeeducation.org, Global Climate Science Labs. The event for the International Public Science Event Conference has been announced when it is and where it is. So that's May 31st to June 2nd. I'll put it onto the listserv. It will be at the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library Center in Atlanta, Georgia. So that would be an example on our genres of education in the science festival world. That is the international connection. So what I would like to do as a clean member is just to reach out, and this goes with Frank and ECOS and everything, of they know that I bring climate change to that event. We do exhibits, so we can help to have the genres, those that do education in a certain world, making their international ties. I would certainly want to see that it is then linking up with ECOS and following its leadership. These are millions of people participate in these science events around the world, and there's again the one on DC. We have the Bay Area. We have 50,000 and 15,000 there, so it's a major way of connecting with people. And that is May 31st to 2nd. I'm not really expecting other people to show up unless they do the science festivals. I just want to see that we're linking the networks and we're maximizing that. And clean will be seen at this conference. Okay, thanks.
Other announcements? I actually have a quick one that I'll maybe have more on at a future date, and that is a week from today. I am heading up to Mohawk College in Hamilton, Ontario for an event that's going to kick off Ontario's climate leadership, climate change leaders partnership, which involves 3 universities and some provincial funding for doing climate change education across the province of Ontario. Initially, each of the 3 partner institutions will be working with 10 school districts on climate change education, and they hope that that will scale up to the entire province. That's about all I know about it, but I am going to the event a week from today, so hopefully after that I'll know some more. Speaking of international things.
John, just one quick follow-up. There's a gentleman named Curtis Jenkins. He is the national focal point for education-related work put his bio and his email in there. Just if you find him, it would be good to connect him, because what we're trying to do is build more bridges between United States climate education related work and Canadian climate change education work, because it's ridiculous if we're not doing that. Of any two countries we should be collaborating deeply with, it would be Canada.
Right. I am. If the traffic is good, I can be in Ontario in 17 minutes from where I'm sitting right now.
Right. So I mean, there's no reason why the national boundary should be a limiting factor at all.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to learning more about what's going on up there and figuring out ways we can collaborate.
Fantastic.
Other announcements. Okay, well, let us get to today's main event. And let me make sure that I'm paying attention to my facilitation guide here. And our speakers today are Amy Frame and Linda Livers or Livers?
Livers is correct, but either way is fine.
Okay. And they will be speaking about the Environmental and Climate Change Literacy Summit. And I'm just going to let them take it away. Take it away.
Amy?
Good morning or afternoon, everybody. Yeah. Hi there. Thank you, Frank, for asking us to present. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides now with you guys. All right. Does that look right to you guys?
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, let me just take a sip of coffee first. All right. So today we're going to talk about collaboration in California between the two major university systems, the UCs and the Cal States, in conjunction with, I don't know, hundreds of educators and educational leaders that that is taking place here in California all around the issue of climate change. So I'm going to briefly talk about what's going on in California, talk about the ECLIPS project. We have our project manager, Linda Livers, on here to talk about key aspects of the summit planning and report process. I will talk about the report recommendations and the summit highlights, and then I hope to have time to have some discussion with you guys as well. Does that sound okay? I
Yes.
know I'm used to teaching online, and my students know to, I don't know, thumbs up or something like that. Okay, great. So just a little bit about me. I work at 10 Strands. I'm the K-12 program manager, and I've been in environmental education for 20 years as a teacher and administrator, and opened a few charter schools, and really excited to work now statewide implementing environmental literacy throughout California. And Linda can introduce herself now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Linda Livers, and I've been working as the project management consultant with 10 Strands over the past 3 years. And I've worked with them on a variety of projects, from the Global Climate Action Summit Education Affiliate event in San Francisco in 2018 to garnering support for SB 720 and some different items with development around fundraising events and soliciting funders.
And we just thought that in addition to talking about the ideas, you know, that I know that there are people on this call that are doing a lot of the organizing and coordinating work, and thought it might be interesting for you to hear about how some of this epic collaboration came to be. And I should say too that Frank Newpold was also a partner on this project on the curriculum subcommittee and got to see the whole thing. So if you have any anything to add at any point, Frank, please do.
Absolutely. Thank you. Really pleased to have you guys here with us today.
Great. And I'm pleased to be here too. I've been on these calls now for about a year as a result of learning about clean through my involvement in this project, and always excited to hear how this connects to things going on in other states and other countries. So 10 Strands, who Linda and I represent, our mission is to build and strengthen the partnerships and strategies that will bring environmental literacy to all of California's K-12 students. And this ECCLPS partnership has been a sort of unexpected one. We mainly work in K-12. We didn't realize that we'd be branching out into higher ed, but it's turned out to be really powerful and exciting aspect of our work. In California, we have raised over $10 million in private funding to invest in our 3 pillars. So that's creating a supportive context for environmental literacy, including climate change literacy through legislation, incremental infusion of environmental literacy into the state standards and frameworks and professional development schemes, and then cultivating leading edge exemplars of environmental and climate change literacy going on in districts throughout the state. So that is sort of our approach. We tend not to directly do the work ourselves, but work through other organizations that are already doing this good work and support them and catalyze the movement. Just for reference, California is huge. I'm pretty sure you guys know that, but you know, we have 6 million students, you know, more than 260,000 teachers in about 1,000 school districts and 10,000 different schools. And then who we're working with here are the University of California, which has 10 campuses with 280 students, and the Cal States, which have 23 campuses, 480,000 students enrolled. And I think importantly for this work, they prepare half of California's teachers and 1/12 of all teachers nationally. So if we can make movement on how teachers are prepared and developed to teach about climate change in teacher prep in the system, I think we can make a pretty huge impact. Just for a little bit of background, a lot's been going on in California, going all the way back to 2003 when we passed the Education and the Environment Initiative. This basically defined our environmental principles and concepts that our students would learn about. For about the next 7 years, a model curriculum was developed. In 2015, the environmental literacy blueprint was adopted for the state's K-12 work. And then recently in 2018, Senate Bill 720 embedded our environmental principles and concepts, which included climate change and environmental justice, into our actual ed code. So we also have a definition of an environmentally literate person, that being someone who has the capacity to act individually and with others to support ecologically sound, economically prosperous, and equitable communities for present and future generations. And I think it probably took the various committees a number of months just to agree on those words there, I'm sure. Our EPNCs, is anyone on the call familiar with California's environmental principles and concepts?
I am. This is Frank.
Yes, but always looking to learn more. Jim.
Okay. So these, the environmental principles and concepts are 5 principles. I'm not going to go in great detail, but there are 5 principles and about 2 or 3 concepts under each one that explain the relationship between human and natural systems and how they interact. And the big idea with them is interdependence. And the intention is that the students learn these in grades K through 12 in conjunction with their normal grade level standards in the different content areas. And Senate Bill 720 recently updated the EPNCs in terms of the topics that students learn about to include climate change. It didn't make it to number 1, but it did make it to number 2, so that's pretty good. And number 3 is environmental justice. That's a big concern here in California. I mean, and for a lot of us, really valuable to have this embedded in our education code, that is what we're expected to teach. The law also explicitly directed the state superintendent of public instruction to encourage and support the incorporation of the EPNCs which include climate change, into the credential requirements for teachers and administrators. And our ed code was updated to ensure that the EP&Cs are integrated into our standards and frameworks in ELA, science, history, health, and math. And we're making great progress on that. Currently, our history and science frameworks and health all involve the EP&Cs. We're working on math right now. And our ELA framework was recently updated, so it'll be a bit more time for that. But we've also got our visual and performing arts framework to include the environmental principles and concepts as well. And all of that work is really mainly due to Jerry Lieberman, who's been on this project since the beginning. And I think is really excited to see the momentum that is taking off around this. And then lastly, the textbooks that we adopt, that the state recommends for adoption, then have to also include these environmental principles and concepts. So it is in our curriculum, is my point. Okay. And the idea is that within each of the subjects, so such as science with NGSS, it's almost, I think, like a fourth dimension in California to the next generation science standards. It's something that you talk about throughout. And there are lots of examples of lessons and units where these are embedded. And obviously climate change is a primary topic where this would show itself. Lastly, on this, there's really a convergence in California too, that among the most recently published frameworks, we want students to be doing inquiry and we want students to be taking action around local events and phenomena and issues that are important to them. So all of these things create a context where talking about climate change and issues related to climate change are not out there, they're in there, they're baked in, the context is right for this. In terms of our state's climate emissions policy, we're also ahead of the curve on that. I mean, we have a goal of 100% zero carbon electricity economy by 2045. So a lot of our state's agencies are working towards that. So at the same time that sort of from the kindergarten up, we're working on getting our kids environmentally literate. The state also has these, lofty goals, and we're trying to figure out how to meet in the middle. And I would say, I don't know tons about the details of it, but the UC Carbon Neutrality Initiative has had a big impact on those campuses, at least in terms of, I think, first changing their infrastructure, but I think they're now also thinking through changing the education that they offer their students. So California at this point, thanks to the ECLIPS project, sort of has two blueprints. It has a K-12 blueprint for environmental literacy in the public education system. And the ECLIPS report that you see on your right is sort of like a blueprint for higher ed when it comes to environmental literacy and what that should look like. Are there any questions at this point about just the context of this work in California?
Not at this point.
Yeah, want to give you a chance to give us more.
Okay, great. I will give you more. So let's talk about ECLIPS. So ECLIPS started out in November of 2018, I think, at a summit. We're at a meeting where people decided that they were going to put on a summit. And for me, I just wanted to share that this is a really personal and interesting story. When I was a doctoral student at UCLA, nobody was thinking about climate change or environmental literacy and education together. So we had a lot of environmental work going on, and then we had the ed school, and they did not match up. There was someone from the evolutionary biology department who actually wrote a book called The Failure of Environmental Education, who I thought might be on my committee, but he had completely given up on education as being a viable pathway to deal with environmental issues and with climate change. Right as I was leaving UCLA, I ran into Jeff Scher, who wrote the book on the right, Teaching Climate Change to Adolescents, which some of you guys might be familiar with, and I felt like I had a little hope. And eventually I did get on my dissertation committee. The dean of the ed school, Marcelo, who was friends with the Pope and was interested in climate change, especially as a social justice issue. So when it came time so that's one piece. Not a lot was going on. Things happened quickly. The thing that happened was Dr. Ram came in. He's been working on bending the curve so he's a climate scientist you guys I'm sure are familiar with, down at UC San Diego. He published a report on climate solutions, which then became a course, a MOOC that was spread throughout the UCs and is currently being spread to other countries as well. And maybe some of you guys are more familiar with the details of that. But so it's definitely about the science, but it's also about all of the technology and solutions that are involved. So something happened, and Ram got in contact with Marcelo and a couple of other folks from the Cal States, Fred and Marquita, and they decided to put together something that would not just, something bigger, something that would, the UCs and Cal States do not tend to work together on a lot of projects. They're rivals, I guess, within the state, but this project was important enough to bring everyone together. So they put together an amazing team. There were 6 co-chairs for the different committees. We had pre-service, in-service, and curriculum subcommittees, because those are the 3 aspects that the universities are most involved in when it comes to climate change. And then the point of this is just to show you that there were all of those people as authors. So all of the people on the subcommittee were authors of this report that we ended up writing with recommendations about how the universities could best impact K-12 climate change teaching. Okay. We also had tons of, these are sponsors, but they're also partners. These are the people that were involved. So Linda will talk a tiny bit more about the group that we put together to put our heads together to do this work. And she's going to go ahead and take it away right now. Go, Linda.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So I was brought on to the ECLPS project management team, project team as the project manager in October of 2018. And that's when the CSU Chancellor's Office held their in-person meeting in Long Beach that started the work, the momentum. And the project management role is broken down into these 5 categories on the slide. The budget that we were managing was $250,000, and half of that came from UCOP, so UC Office of the President, because of their carbon neutrality initiative, and the other half.
Linda, we just went mute.
Linda, you're showing is muted.
You had unmuted. There it is. Yep. You almost had it. Maybe hit it one more time. There it is.
Okay.
There we go.
Sorry about that. So I was talking about the budget, the funds. So about half came from UCOP and the other half from UCLA's Graduate School of Education and Information Studies, which was Marcelo's school. And there were some contributions from California Subject Matter Project and the CSU Chancellor's Office too. So I'm going to share some key aspects of the event planning and report process that were impactful. The key aspects that we'll take a closer look at are attendees, demonstrating the sustainable practices and challenges and successes of the report. Next slide, please, Amy.
Sorry.
There we go. So to take a closer look at the audience, our goal was to gather a group of stakeholders to collaborate on and really brainstorm ways to implement the recommendations that the subcommittees came up with in the report. So we thought it was really important that the audience represent all of California's diversity, including Indigenous leaders, California's regions, all genders, all perspectives, with a broad age range. And with looking through that lens, we invited stakeholders from these groups that are listed on the left side. The list starts with the largest group of attendees and ends with the smallest. So for higher education, we had deans of colleges of ed, provosts, professors from a range of different subjects, directors, all from UCOP and the CSU Chancellor's Office, private universities, California Subject Matter Project, and CalTeach programs within the UC system. So we had representation from all 10 UCs and 21 out of the 23 CSUs in the state. For the teachers category, we had about 25 teachers. We initially planned to have 10 because we thought the summit should instead focus more at the superintendent level. But as the report came along and was really highlighting current work and best practices, it became increasingly important to have the people there that are actually doing the work. As for students, we had 10 students attend, and 4 of those were high school students, and we gathered nominations from the steering committee to gather those students.
Next slide.
And you're mute again, Linda.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I apologize. I'm not sure. It keeps popping up that I have a microphone issue, so I apologize if that happens again. I'll go ahead and continue. So we also budgeted some ECLPS funds for reimbursing teachers, students, and those in need of financial assistance to attend. And overall, this was really important to be able to ensure that we could have representation from the whole state. So overall, the variety of voices really lended to rich conversations, building a better long-term collaborative network around environmental literacy, which is a large part of the 10 Strands mission. Next slide, please, Amy. So we demonstrated sustainable practices as much as possible in all aspects of the event. We considered a full vegan menu, but wanted to be considerate to those who are used to animal protein in their diets. So we incorporated 1 protein option for each meal, and everything else was vegan. And for day 1, for the dinner, or the event was an evening reception dinner, followed by day 2, which was a full day event. And for the dinner, we had 2 vegan entree options, but we also had chicken and cheese in the appetizers that we passed around for balance. And we substituted olive oil for vinegar and butter with the bread, and just paid really close attention to detail. And for breakfast, we had eggs, and lunch, we had organic chicken as the protein option. As for water, we had water stations and rented glassware instead of using the plastic cups that the conference center typically used. And we asked that all attendees bring in their own water bottle in advance. So instead of centerpieces, I have a picture over here on the slide to the right. Instead of actual centerpieces that aren't sustainable to have flowers or plants for one-time use, we organized with the UCLA Lab School to have 3rd through 6th graders create centerpieces out of reused and repurposed materials, such as old books, egg cartons, and bottoms of plastic water bottles. So a challenge that we faced was still individually wrapped items. It was really difficult to avoid, such as wrapped bars or food.
You're going in and out.
It's cutting in and out, but not muted.
Okay, how's that?
Good, good.
Okay. I'll try to wrap this up while you guys can hear me. So lastly, related to food and planning around sustainability practices, we also tried to order a smaller quantity of food to avoid food waste, but the conference center's policy was that we had to have the correct servings of food for total attendees, so we could not do anything there. But overall, our efforts were noticed. Next slide, please, Amy.
What? There we go.
So the challenge with the report, the challenge was that we had a lot of voices and we didn't have a clear plan when we started. So we really overcame these with an agreed upon set of recommendations though in the end. And the report was not a concept when we initially convened the steering committee group of 31 members. And when the idea of the report was proposed, a lot of folks were concerned about the timeline and the new set of work entirely. But overall, the subcommittee co-chairs quickly got organized and built out their subcommittees and began writing. We also did not budget for a report. So when this came up, California Subject Matter Project stood up and funded that production. The report really reflects the collaboration of K-12 and the higher ed partnership that we had in the steering committee. There were different expectations of what should go in the report, and the recommendations went through several adjustments to reflect what UCOP and the CSU Chancellor's Office were okay with signing off on. And this includes updating language. For example, one of the recommendations recommends a joint UC-CSU Center for Climate Change Education, and that was changed down to a UC-CSU task force instead. We brought on an editor in October. Mind you, the event was in December, and she was able to incorporate feedback from all steering committee and subcommittee members, which really totaled a group of about 50 people in time for publishing. So that was another challenge that we made it through. And the report was also vetted by scientists, state agencies, and has been really well received. And we did not print the full report to be sustainable. I think it's about 70 pages. So we only printed a hard copy of the summary.
You went out.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thanks.
Yes.
I'm not sure where I cut off, but I was just mentioning that we only printed a copy of the summary for each attendee on eco-friendly paper, and both the summary and report are available on the website. So as for next steps, the ECLPS Steering Committee convenes their next meeting next month and plan to get organized around next steps in